Welcome to part 3 of our 1.3 notes over distance and midpoint. Now remember, in part 2 we just finished up what the definition of midpoint is, which, remember, the midpoint is the middle, or a point that is halfway between two endpoints. Now there are two situations where this can occur. This can occur on either the number line or the coordinate plane. Now the number line, what we have two numbers, specifically x1 and x2, that we can find the halfway point between the two. Now we can think of x1 and x2 to be numbers such as 5 or 10 or -20 or any number that you can think of like that. Now the formula to find the halfway point or the midpoint of two numbers is x1 plus x2 all divided by 2. Now the easy way to think about this is the same thing as finding the average of two numbers. Now when we talk about averages, remember, when we go back, averages, what we do is we add up all the points and then we divide by the number of points that we just added. In this case we only have 2 points, x1 and x2. So we divide by 2 because that's how many points we have, and that is our halfway point or our midpoint. Now, for the midpoint formula for a coordinate plane, now we are finding the point that is on the number line that is halfway between those two. So this means that we will be getting a point such as m of x, y. This means that in our answer, it will be a coordinate, not just a simple number, whereas in the number line, when we do that, it'll just be a number. So to find our x value, we are going to do what we did for the number line, except we're just going to look at the x's. So to find the midpoint x value, we're going to take the sum of x1 and x2 and divide that by 2. Now we'll do the exact same thing for the y's. So y is equal to the sum of y1 plus y2 all divided by 2. And then once you get those answers, you simply just put it in as a coordinate. So you'll have an answer for x and an answer for y, and that'll be your point M. So that'll be your point, your midpoint. Now in example 3, in part A, it tells us the coordinates on a number line of k and j are -12 and 16 respectively. Find the coordinate of the midpoint of segment KJ. So K and J are just 2 points that have a number associated with them. Now, when it means respectively, it means that -12 maps to point K and 16 maps to J. So when we are doing anything later on this semester, we need to make sure that when it says respectively, they go in the same order. So K is 1, or we go K to -12 and J to 16. Alright, so now we need to find the midpoint of this segment KJ. So we are going to use our number line formula. So we are going to do x1, which in this case is -12, plus x2, which is 16, all divided by 2. So we add those together. -12 plus 16 is 4, divided by 2, and we get a final answer of 2. So that means the number that is the midpoint, or halfway between -12 and 16, is 2. Now in B, it tells us to find the coordinates of the midpoint of segment GH, for G being a point at 8, -6, and H is -14, 12. So now we are going to be using the coordinate plane and our answer is going to be given as a point. So the first part that we need to find is we need to find the x value. We need to find the midpoint for the x values. So remember, x values are always the first part of your coordinate. Okay, so we're going to follow as such. We are going to do our 8 plus negative 14 all divided by 2. So we're adding our x's and dividing by 2. So 8 plus negative 14 is negative 6. Divide that by 2 and we get an answer of negative 3 for x. Now we'll do the exact same thing for y. Now remember, we'll sum up our y terms now. We're going to do negative 6 plus 12 all divided by 2. Now negative 6 plus 12 is 6 divided by 2, and we get an answer of 3. So this means now we just put these two answers together as a point. So this means that our midpoint of GH is at the point negative 3, comma, positive 3. And that is how you find the point that is halfway between two endpoints, or as we are going to call this, a midpoint. Now in example 4, tells us to find the coordinates of D if E, where it is mapped at the point negative 6, 4, is the midpoint of segment DF, and F has coordinates negative 5, negative 3. So this is saying that we have a segment DF. So we're going to write DF, and it has a midpoint at E. Now it told us we do not know what the coordinates of D are, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to give it two variables, namely x and y. Now we know the point for E is negative 6, 4, and we know F is negative 5, 3. Sorry, negative 5, negative 3. So our whole goal now is to find what the coordinates of x and y are. Now remember, we are going to use our midpoint formula for coordinate planes. So we add the endpoints up and divide by 2. So we're going to add our x's together, which in this case our endpoints for our x's are D and F. So we are going to add for x, we are going to add negative 5 plus x all divided by 2. Now we know this has to be equal to our midpoint, which we already know what our midpoint is. We know our midpoint is negative 6. Now all we have to do is we need to use some algebra to solve for x. To solve for x, what we need to do is we need to multiply both sides by 2, because right now we are being divided by 2, so we need to cancel these two out. So we'll get negative 5 plus x is equal to negative 12. Now remember, in algebra, if we do one thing on one side, we need to do it on the other as well. That way it keeps the balance. Alright, so now we have negative 5 plus x equals negative 12. So to get rid of the negative 5, we have to add 5 to both sides. And that keeps our balance. So then negative 5 and plus 5 cancel each other. So on the left side we are left with x, and on the right side negative 12 plus 5 is negative 7. So that is our x for D. Now what I want you guys to do is find the y value for D. I'm going to help you set it up. Now remember, we have to add the endpoints and divide by 2, and that will be our midpoint. So when we add our endpoints together, our endpoints are negative 3 plus y, all divided by 2, is equal to 4. Now pause the video and work this problem out algebraically. Think of the exact same way we just did it for the x value. The final answer you should get for y is equal to 11. Now, to write our answer, we're going to write our answer D as the point -7, 11. We cannot just keep it as x equals -7 and y equals 11. We need to explain that the point D is at -7, 11. Now please continue on to part 4 of our notes.